Morning, you guys. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm going to jump into this morning right off the bat by asking you a reflective question. So if you need to sip some coffee real quick, get after it, right? Because I am. I'm going to ask you a reflective question I want you to think about. I think it's an important question. And it's this. When you pause and you think about your life right now, how do you think God might be trying to grow you? When you think about that, when you pause and you think about your life as it is right now, right? Not ultimately, but just in your life right now, how do you think God might be trying to grow you? And if when I ask that question, you find yourself going like, okay, that's a big question and I'm not sure how to think about that. Maybe I can ask it a couple of different ways that might be helpful. One way is this. What do you think God might be leading you to do in your life right now? That's a growth question. Another is this. Instead of what is he leading you to do, what might God be leading you to stop doing in your life right now, right? Sometimes it's about doing something or moving into something. Other times it's changing something, stopping something. There's another question. Where do you experience discontent in your life right now? And when you think about your life about a year from now, if this is still like this, you feel uneasy about it. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not content to stay the same and you feel like there's some need to move past this, to grow past this, to do something with it. Here's another one. Who is God telling you to love? Maybe there's somebody in your life that you feel like God's been bringing up in your mind, your heart, in real life, whatever it is, and you're just like, I feel like God might want me to love this person, but it feels like a step, and I feel like I need to grow to step into that. Or what about this? Is there a step in your life that you feel like God simply wants you to move toward or take? Right? You can look at that as all different questions, and I get that they kind of are, but really all of those are just different ways of looking at this one question that I was asking you to begin with. And it's when you pause and when you think about your life right now, how do you think God wants you to grow? Or even is partnering with you to grow? Now, if you're sitting here and as I ask the question, you're like, nothing's really coming to mind. That's okay. It's a big question that would actually, for a lot of people, take like a bit of reflection to even think about. There's nothing wrong with you for being like, I'm not quite sure how to answer that. That's totally okay. I'd encourage you. I think it's a good question to ask. I think it's a good question to wrestle with, and I'd encourage you to continue to do so. But if something came to mind for you, if you had just even a little bit in there where you're like, I think this, or I have this thought, or there's this idea. I think God's been leading me towards this potentially. I've been wrestling with this and I'm trying to grow here. And I think God's doing that. Whatever that might be, you know what I want you to know? I just want you to know, I think that that's good. I think that that's a good and beautiful wrestling match that you might be in, or a good and beautiful thought process, or pondering, or whatever it is that it feels to you. I think that that's actually important. And I want to encourage you to give it the credit that it deserves, because I think when God moves in us, there's good things he wants to do through us. And I also want to acknowledge growth is hard. It is. Growth is never a thing where you're just and then I just passively happens. Growth is we're always stretched into something. We always learn because there was something we didn't know. And now we had to learn our way through something. There's an awkwardness. There's a discomfort. There's so many pieces to growth that are just kind of it's so much easier just to not. It's so much easier to go, I'm good. I'm staying here. Right here seems great. I'm going to live here. Do you know what I mean? So much easier to do that. But I want you to know that I think that's a good and beautiful thing. And the reason I acknowledge that is because sometimes in our life, God puts things that are in front of us where he wants to grow us, sometimes large things, sometimes small things. And yet oftentimes what happens is we get stuck before we ever start, right? Maybe you've gone through seasons of time where God's grown you in some ways and you're like, I did that, I'm done now, but you're not. Right? Because there's a God who's always walking with us, growing us, leading us, guiding us. And the reality of the matter is there's always the next piece that God wants to grow us into. And sometimes that takes time. And sometimes we all deserve pause and rest and all of that. But I think those are good and beautiful things. And too often it's easy to actually get stuck in one place before we ever start again for a whole host of reasons. Today we're in a series called Growing Pains. We're in week 2 of this series called Growing Pains, where we're going to use our time together to look at a moment in the Old Testament, specifically in the book of Exodus, where we get to follow a certain character. And we get to watch, I love this character, by the way, we get to watch this person move forward and grow and struggle, and there's something that God wants to do in their life to change. But because they've grown, their life's gotten more complicated, and they end up facing 2 big difficulties that we all face. And I'll tell you what they are right off the bat here. The first one is this. They believe that their weaknesses are keeping them from what God has for them. Do you ever believe that? Do you ever feel that? They believe their weaknesses are keeping them from what God has for them. That's the first one. And the second one is this. They think that when it comes to moving forward into what God has for them, that they have to do it all themselves. Do you ever know what that's like? I do. And I love that we get to talk about this because I think so often, how many of us have felt like, I know there's things that God wants to grow me in. And maybe even before when I asked you that question, something came to mind and you're like, I know there's things that God wants me to grow in or that God's leading me towards, or there's an opportunity for me to step into and whatever this might be. But you know what? I just keep looking at all my weaknesses and I recognize I don't think I'm the person to step into that. I think I'm going to bow out right now. And it's not because you're terrible or anything else. It just feels like this is a big deal. And this has some work to do. Do you know what I mean? Before I step into that. And so you kind of discredit it or you move away. Or how many of us have ever found ourselves going, man, I think God has something he's trying to do in me or through me, and he's growing me. And yet, this is my growth. It's my relationship with God. This is about me. And so it's all up to me, right? Like I have to do it all myself. And then you get overwhelmed by that because you look in the mirror and you're like, and I see me. And it's like a lot. So I think I'm just going to stay here. And it's easy actually in each of these moments when we find ourselves kind of getting pulled into this to get stuck in the status quo, to settle for just more of a norm here of where we already are instead of moving into the things that maybe God might be leading us towards. And here's what I know. If I ask any of you guys, how many of you, when you think about your life, the way that if I were to be able to phrase your life and be like, your life could be best described as, you'd love it if I said these words, status quo. Yeah, nobody wants that, right? Like that's not what any of us are really after. And yet it's just so easy to stay in that place because growth is kind of difficult. So I want to talk about this today. What I want to say from the very beginning of this morning is this. If you resonate with anything that I've been saying here, anything that we've just talked about, and if you feel like maybe there was a season of time where you grew, but now there's this place where you just feel stuck, or you feel like you're kind of stuck in what you might feel like is status quo, and it's because you're struggling in your own weaknesses, or you feel like you have to do this all yourself, or it just feels like it's a lot. Maybe, the thing I want to suggest is that maybe the dissatisfaction and the tension that you might feel is just growing pains. Really, genuinely. Maybe this whole thing is a part of God's process to grow you. And maybe that tension that we're feeling today is just part of God nudging you forward into what he has for you. Because the truth of the matter is your weaknesses are never the end of the story. They aren't. And truth be told, none of us have to do everything ourselves, which is good news in being a human being, isn't it? So I told you this morning, we'd be looking at a human being in the book of Exodus, or in the Old Testament, the book of Exodus. That person is none other than Moses, like the character from Exodus. And we're going to pick his story up in Exodus chapter 2. We're going to start in chapter 2 and kind of move through that and get to chapter 4 today. We're not going to read the whole thing. We'll kind of make our way forward. So you've been warned, or so you can turn there. But if you don't have your Bible, that's okay. You can follow along on the screen too. But first, let me give you a little bit of background about Moses. So Moses has a really unique situation in that Moses is Hebrew in the nation of Egypt. The Hebrew people were the slave labor workforce of Egypt. There are about 1 million of them in Egypt, I believe, at that point in time, which is a lot, right? And so there are a lot of Hebrew slaves in the nation of Egypt, which means this is normalized and common. But Moses didn't grow up that way. He didn't experience that same thing. Moses was found by Pharaoh's daughter when he was a baby, and she takes him in and raises him. So Moses is raised around Egyptian nobility and eventually is like adopted into the house. And so he thinks of like Pharaoh's daughter as his mom and this, but he knows that he's Hebrew. He knows this piece somewhere along the lines as he grows up. And now Moses, where we're going to pick up today in Exodus chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 11, Moses has grown. We know that he's grown. The Bible's going to tell us that he's grown. He's grown in strength. He's grown in size. He's grown in conviction. He's grown in leadership. He's grown in so many different ways. And because he's grown, he's about to encounter a moment that he's experienced 100 times before as a young person, but never thought to do anything about it, or never thought to enter into that, and probably just was like, well, it is how it is, and that's the way it is, or I've never asked questions, or that's someone else's to deal with. And he's about to see something that he's seen 100 times, but this time He's grown. He's different than he used to be. And so he's going to respond differently than he used to respond. And we see this, Exodus chapter 2, verse 11. It says, one day, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens. That word there also can be their oppressions, their injustice. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. The Bible wants you to know that when he sees this, he's like, that's one of me. It's one of my people. Verse 12. So Moses looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So Moses goes out, and it says for the specific purpose to see the Hebrew people, which Moses has grown. He understands a little bit about who he is, and that's complicated to be a Hebrew person when your people are out enslaved, but you're raised around nobility, and he goes and he looks out at them and he sees them being oppressed. Now, he would have seen this 100 times before. It would have been really common to see a slave owner or a slave master beating a Hebrew slave in this culture at this point in time. That would have been a sight that he would have noticed so many times, but this time he's grown. This time he's stronger. This time there's something in Moses that says, those are my people. When he says that, it's like he looks and he goes, that could be me. I'm not okay with this. And he steps in and he does something that he never would have done before. And it's because he's grown, maybe even that he does that. He steps in and he tries to intervene in this way. It's not the word that's used for murder there. So if you're like, Moses became murderous, that's not how this happens. What the story wants you to know is that he intervenes, and along the way, someone dies. He kills them. This is what happens. And this is a very big deal. Because now Moses has a whole new set of problems, a whole new set of difficulties, a whole new set of things. Have you ever had that moment in your life where you're like, and then I grew and I got to a certain space, and then that was just more complicated than the last one, you know? And now he's at this space because he's intervened, because of the consequences of some of what's happened. Guys, Pharaoh's the one who dictates that there would be a slave labor workforce in Egypt. And so for Moses to step in, to intervene, and to do this way, do you know what ends up happening? He has stood up to Pharaoh. And do you know what happens when you stand up to the most powerful ruler in the known land? You get squashed, because there are no exceptions, especially not in your household. You got to make an example of this. And so Moses isn't going to be okay, and he knows it. He knows this is not going to work out, and his life is in danger, and he's forced to flee the city, and he goes into hiding. And after some time passes by, like quite a bit of time, and Moses is now out, and he's no longer in Egypt, and it feels like that story has ended, and now he's doing his new thing out here, right? His life has changed, and things are different. All of a sudden, he encounters a burning bush. Some of you may have heard this story before. And the voice of God speaks to him through the burning bush. Exodus chapter 3, verse 10, God says this to Moses. He says, come here, Moses, join me. I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. This is a big deal. This is the moment where God looks at Moses and says, Moses, I saw the way you intervened in that moment. I saw when you looked out and you cared about all the Hebrew people, and you saw them because you saw yourself. I saw the cares you have. I saw what's in your heart. I saw the passion you have. And guess what? I care about this too. What's the Bible tell us? God looks and says, these are my people too. I have the same care that you have here, Moses. This isn't okay. And so you know what? Good news. You tried to stop a moment. I want to partner with you to stop the whole thing. I want to partner with you not just to save a man's life, but ultimately to liberate and free all of these people, Moses. And so I'm the God of the universe speaking to you through a burning bush, and I want to do this with you. And now we probably think this is amazing. Like if you were in this spot, you'd be like, this is amazing that God would trust Moses with this. This is amazing that God would go to Moses and say, I can't believe, God would go to Moses and say, I want to partner with you. We look and we're like, I can't believe you do that. That's amazing. Moses must be so honored. But if you were in Moses' situation, is that how you would feel? If God was like, I want to partner with you to go in front of the most powerful ruler in the known land, to liberate not just a person, all of them. They're just going to let 1 million people, slave labor workforce, go. Completely upset the economy, the hierarchy, the ruling system. It's all just going to get turned over. I'm going to do it through you, Moses. Are you excited? If that's you, friends, are you like, I just can't believe God would ask this of me. I feel so privileged. Or are you internally losing your mind? See, sometimes God will lead you to a place where it's like, I want to grow you in this, or I want you to grow or step into this moment, or I want to lead you in this direction. And we go through this progression, which we'll kind of walk through a little bit this morning. And the very first thing that happens, because growth is never easy, is we find ourselves saying, what have I gotten myself into? Right? It's like one of the very first things, because you think growth's going to be fun, and then it's growth. right? You think it's going to be easy, and then it's growth, and you're just like, this is hard. What have I gotten myself into? Have you been there? I think for us, it all starts with a care, right? Something good. Maybe you were a high school student, and you worked hard as a high school student, and you did a good job with that, and you got your classes and your grades and your things, and you graduated, and then all of a sudden you stepped into college. And everybody suddenly looked at you, and they're like, what's your 4-year career path that you're going to be doing here with all the answers that you need to have figured out right now? And you're like, I don't know, that seems like a lot. I haven't been able to figure all of that out just yet. And it seems like I might need a little space and time. And they're like, but you need to figure that out because you're paying for it. And then you look and you suddenly recognize this is the most expensive endeavor I've done in a long time, or ever. And all of a sudden the costs go up on that thing and I need to pay for it. So I've got to work and I'm busier now than I was. And the tests are harder and the school's harder and the classes are bigger and things have more at stake. And you can find yourself in that moment looking, going, what have I gotten myself into? I knew how to do this. I don't know how to do that. What have I gotten myself into? Or have you ever worked in a job where you were like, I care about this job and I want to do a good job with this, so you do. And you work and you grow as a person, you grow as an employee, as a coworker, and people see that. And they look and they go, you're great. I want to give you more responsibility. I want to promote you. Or I just want to amplify your job or expand what it is you're doing. And you're like, man, what an honor. I'm so glad to be recognized. But then they give that to you? And have you ever had the moment where you're like, I knew how to do my job before, but now I'm doing this thing and there's like more people, more problems, more issues, more complexities, and I'm out of my league. Like, what have I gotten myself into? And it can almost feel like maybe I should go back. You can daydream about the simple life from before that you thought you had. Or you get into a relationship and you feel like it's fun and you're doing a good job with this and you know how to do this. It's going great. And then you decide to make things serious at some point in time. Maybe at some point in time you even decide to get married. At some point in time you decide to have kids, wherever you might be in this. And you were like, I knew how to do the thing before, but now this has got new complexities, new issues, new things. And I just feel like I'm in over what have I gotten myself into? And people never say these things out loud, but they feel them inside sometimes, don't they? Because it's hard. And we always think that this is just like growth as a younger person's thing. And you think that like older people, they've already grown and now they coast. But if you're and older people in the room are shaking their head at me. If you're an older person in this room, right, an older adult, you can grow and you can deepen and you can learn how to succeed in this life. And you can get where you're like, and I feel pretty confident and stable and capable and good in my life as it is. But then someone you love passes away. Or the job you were partnering in or working in ends. Or significant change suddenly happens in your life, and now all of a sudden it feels like you were capable and competent. Now I have to figure my whole life out all over again. And I'm not young anymore, and this is a little more tiring or weird than it was before, and I'm trying to figure this thing out, and it's hard, and sometimes it can feel like, what have I gotten myself into? And when these moments happen, they happen because we wanted something good. Right? We wanted to go to college. We wanted to learn more. We wanted to step into a career and start something. We wanted to do a good job at work. We wanted to get promoted. We want a relationship or a marriage or a family. Or even with changes in life, we want to continue to have more life because we're not done yet. We want these pieces, and yet they come with growth and they come with this kind of difficulty. And sometimes we find ourselves saying, I just feel like it's like we're in this process where you're here, you're looking, you're like, God, I know you want to grow me, but I just feel like this might be a bit much, or I just feel like I've bit off more than I can chew. And we tell ourselves these things as a way to keep us stuck in our present where we are now. Because it just feels like it might be easier if we could, if we can. Moses does the same thing. He starts to feel these same tensions too. I don't know what this is like. When I first became a youth minister, I had no idea what I was doing. And I tell you guys this, and I think people are like, but you did though. No, I do not know how to convince you more that I had no idea what I was doing. I became a youth minister at 19 years old, which means I had no idea what I was doing. And I was left in charge of about 18 to 19 kids in this room. There were no other volunteers. It was just me, and it was a lot. I knew 3 things. I knew that I needed to teach people about God. I knew I needed to like have fun games for the students and run a program. And I knew that they needed to know I care about them. And I only knew how to do one of them, and it was the last one, where I was just like, I care about you. And everything else, I was absolutely faking it. And the reason why is because I was just like, well, they come up and, you know, high schoolers and middle schoolers have like beautiful theological questions because they haven't learned what to ignore or not to ask or all that stuff. They just ask you beautiful things. And then they're like, so what about this? And I'd be like, I don't know. Let's go on a journey together is what I would always say. And they're thinking like, oh, how nice of him. He's taking me on a journey with him. And the whole time I'm like, I hope they don't find me out that we're just figuring this stuff out together. You know, like we're in it together. I had no idea. I was always worried like, man, I don't know what to teach on. Like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know how to lead this. And I certainly don't know how to keep kids safe, which is important when you're a youth pastor. That's a real thing. I remember there was one night where we were playing games, and I didn't know that sometimes there are games that you shouldn't play in large groups because they cause absolute chaos that you can't ever control again. I didn't know that. And so we were playing this game, and it started to get out of hand. People started to get really competitive, and two of the boys started to get frustrated with each other, and one of them pushed each other into the wall, and the other one got mad and pushed him back, and the other one reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife, and he's standing right there next to me. I've never been in that situation before. Have you? Like, this was my first time for this, and really only time now that I think about this, that I got to walk through this, and he's standing there, and I didn't know what to do, and I just, almost in like reflexes, I just grabbed his wrist and slammed his arm into the wall, and he dropped the knife, and I stood on the knife so he couldn't pick it up and get it back, and he just stared, like darted around, and then ran out the door. And then I had to learn how to do a whole bunch of stuff I'd never done before after that particular moment. I will never forget driving home that night. I can still remember driving home in my tiny clown car. I drove a really small car, my tiny car, and praying to God and just going, God, are you out of your mind? And I know you're not supposed to say that to God, but like, I just thought, like, have you seen what you're working with? Like, this is crazy. I am so in over my head. I have no idea what to do. I like don't know what to teach these kids. I don't know how to do this. I've never ran a program before. I didn't know I needed knife skills to have this job. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, God, you have the wrong guy. And I remember driving home, talking myself into, how do I quit? Like, how do I think about the conversation I need to have so I can tell the person who runs this, that I'm not going to, the senior pastor, I'm not going to do this anymore because you have the wrong person and I've got to go back here. How do I quit? Right? Because sometimes it's easy to get there, friends. When God wants to grow you in something, you ever have that moment where you're just like, I'm in over my head. How did I get here? What do I do? It can feel like a lot because growth is hard, can't it? Sometimes we end up feeling we don't have what it takes. Exodus chapter 3, verse 11. But Moses said to God, right? God says, I want to use you to go to the Pharaoh, do this with the people. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Moses already looks at God and is like, who am I? Have you seen me? I can't do this. I can't. Like, this is too much, too soon, too fast. I can't do this, God. And God replies, I love what he says in verse 12 there, right off the bat, right there in verse 12, he goes, but I will be with you. That's God's response. Moses says, who am I to lead the children out of Egypt? I can't do this. And God immediately says, but I will be with you, Moses. It's as though Moses is going like, have you seen who I am? And then God goes, well, yeah, I have seen who you are, Moses, but have you seen who I am? And I can do this, Moses. I will be with you. And we'll partner. We'll do this thing together. Isn't that beautiful? Would you, if you're Moses in that moment, do you find yourself going like, oh man, I felt like I was way in over my head, but now I'm leaning in. Now I'm trusting. If you do, I don't believe you. This is what Moses does. Moses begins to argue because he's like, but it's still a really big deal, right? So he begins to argue. He says, what if I go to the people and I don't know how to answer their questions? And so the rest of chapter 3 is God telling Moses, well, here's what you can say. Here's how you can answer some of that. Let's talk a little theology quick here, Moses. Let's give you some answers and some understanding on some of these things. You're worried that you won't know? Now you can know. Problem solved, like argument made. Let's go. Right? That's what happens. And then we get to chapter 4 as that ends. And Moses says, no, not let's go. I've got more that I need to say here. Exodus 4:1, he keeps arguing. Moses answered, but behold, I love that. Have you ever prayed that to God? Behold, I dare you. Isn't that fun? Moses says, but behold. And what he's not doing is like, hark, like in talking like weird old English. What that moment is like, but God, look at me. Behold, like, look. Do you see me? like I see me. Behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord God did not appear to you. I can't do this. Do you hear his words? Moses is saying, but God, what if I say what I need to and they don't listen to me? What if I go and I start speaking and they don't give me the time of day? What if I can't speak in a way that they'll even consider God? So God goes, all right, noted. Well, I'm going to partner with you, and here's how you can show them that like you're actually the real deal, and this is a big deal, and you partner with the God of the universe. And so Moses, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your staff, and I want you to throw it on the ground. Moses throws it on the ground, and it becomes a snake. And then God says, now Moses, pick the staff back up. And this is where I'm like, Moses, you're crazy for picking that staff back up. I would have been like, that staff lives on the ground from now on. I'm leaving. But Moses picks the staff back up, and it turns back into a staff. And you're like, that's amazing. What an incredible sign. But God looks at Moses and goes, you can do this now. Like, this is for you. You can show them. Okay, so I've got something in my repertoire. I've got something in my toolbox here. I'm not as unprepared as I thought I was, and maybe they'll listen, but that's not it. God says, Moses, stick your hand in your cloak. He sticks his hand in his cloak. He says, pull your hand out. And he pulls it out, covered in leprosy, which is not exactly the encouragement that Moses is probably looking for either at that moment. And God says, put your hand back in and do it again. And he does it again, and the leprosy is gone. And God says, you have this now. You can go do that. Like, this is for you. Like, this isn't a one-time moment. Moses can now go show the people this sign. And then, as if that's not enough, God tells Moses to essentially go and tells him how to change what the Egyptians would have considered to be sacred and holy, the water of the Nile, and turn it to blood. And this one hits home for the Egyptian people, and this will hit home for the Israelite people in Egypt. Because what he's essentially showing them is, look, I want you to show them that your God is actually bigger than all of this, Moses, and you can. And so you can take the water of the Nile and you can turn it into drops of blood on dry ground and like show them what this means. All these things, Moses, you can do. Guys, I don't know if you're following this. These are like 3 of the best magic tricks / miracles ever. They really are. Like, if you're like, I don't think they're going to listen to me, I think they'll listen to me now. Like, if I suddenly did this with all of you, you'd lose your minds and like wonder what the pyrotechnics or what's the secret or the hidden. Like, this is a crazy moment, especially all this time ago. I think so many of us, have you ever had this thought where you're like, God, I know you want to grow me. And I know you're seeking to like lead me in this direction. I can feel it, but I'm just struggling over it. I'm tense over it. I don't know what to do because I feel like I'm in over my head. And then you find yourself going like, okay, but if you just showed me a sign, then I'll know it's you. And then I'll know that I can and will do this. Moses is great evidence that that is just not true, you guys. Moses is great evidence that like, if I were to tell you, I need you to go to the most powerful ruler of the land, I need you to stand up to him, I need you to turn his economy upside down and actually then liberate the slave labor workforce as a sign of like taking his power and different things away, and I need you to just go lead that out with those people. And I'm like, and here are 3 tricks that you can do along the way to show just how powerful you are. You're still going to be scared. And you're still going to be worried, and Moses is. Guys, here's Moses' reaction, Exodus chapter 4, beginning at verse 10. But Moses said to the Lord, "Oh, my Lord," I love that, "I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord?" No, in light of all that, Moses, therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and I will teach you what you shall speak. And then I love this. Moses hears that, and we're like, oh, that's powerful. God even creates our mouths and can move and open, and the God of all language even, like, wow, isn't that amazing? Isn't that powerful? And Moses goes, verse 13, but he said, "Oh, my Lord, please send someone else." Because that's us. Growth is hard. And we look and we're like, I'm in over my head. And my mouth wants to fall open when I read this passage. It really does. Are you like, if you're just reading this like a biblical text and you're not imagining this moment, I promise you're missing it. Because zoom out for 2 seconds and think about what's happening. Moses is having a conversation with a bush that was randomly on fire that is speaking to him with the audible voice of God. Like, have we thought about that yet? That's what's happened. That is the context for this entire conversation. That's how this thing began, you guys. If you zoom out on that, you're just like, this is the all-powerful God of the universe through this incredible moment of divine intervention speaking directly to Moses. I want to be like, Moses, you're talking to a bush and it's talking back. You should take notes. Like, this is a moment. This is a big deal. And then Moses, like, to your courage and credit, you argued. And then God did these 3 amazing signs. And now you can just do those things. And he said, go, and I'll be with you. And that just happened. And then you're like, but I can't speak right and I can't do this. And he's like, cool, I'll speak through you. I'm like the God of language. I'm the God who does all this. And Moses still says this one thing. He still essentially says, but what about my weaknesses? And this is really, if you're ever in that moment, you guys, where you're in that space where you're like, I think God is trying to grow me in this and growth is difficult. And there's all these reasons to just stay put. And you start to step forward and you get to the spot where you're like, I feel like I might be in over my head and I feel like this is a bit much, right? And then you finally go, but maybe this is what God has for me. And so I'm going to keep stepping into this and I'm going to keep moving forward. What you will find is that suddenly you'll be, instead of looking at the thing itself, you'll start to look back at you and go, but can I really do this? Because there's things I'm not good at that this thing feels like it needs, or there's moments that it feels like this should have, and I'm struggling in it, and it feels like my weaknesses are getting in the way. Moses chapter 3, God looks at him and he says, I want you to go. Moses responds, who am I? Look at me and my weaknesses that I should go. Then later he says, what if they don't believe my words? What if they don't listen to me when I speak? Look at me and look at my weaknesses. Then again in chapter 4, I am not eloquent. And I never have been. I'm slow of speech. I'm not great with my words. Look at me and look at my weaknesses. Friends, sometimes the all-powerful God of the universe is trying to grow us and to lead us into what he has for us. And we just don't see any of it because we become fixated on our own weaknesses. We just miss that conversation. We miss that moment entirely. Sometimes God is trying to lead us into what he has for us, but we can't open ourselves up to it because we've become consumed with our shortcomings or our insecurities or our fears, and we stay looking at those things and we miss everything else. Sometimes God's trying to grow you into the future that he has for you, but you can't see it or step even towards it because you are fixated on a moment of sin in your past, or failure in your past, or weakness in some way, shape, or form in your past. Sometimes God's trying to partner with us in the right here and the right now, but we don't even realize it because we can't see that when all we see is look at me and look at my weaknesses. We miss the whole story because it's like our life suddenly just boils down to this. We go, look at me, look at my weaknesses, and I think I'll just stay stuck right here. This is what happens. And yet God looks at Moses and he says, Moses, I care about the Hebrew people just like you. What is going on in your heart, it's in my heart too. And I've been leading you. And Moses, I want to do great things through you and you won't be alone and I want to partner with you. And yet Moses is staring at his own weaknesses and stuck where he is. You know what I think is happening here? Is I think this is a moment where God is saying, you keep looking at this. Moses, look at me. You keep staring at yourself in the mirror and your own weaknesses and your own things, but Moses, look at me. You're missing this. And do you know why I think this is so hard for Moses? And I actually think this is why it's so hard for us. Because when you start to stare at your growth and your own weaknesses and your own things, and then you start to get to this place where you feel like, I have to do this all myself. I really believe Moses felt like he had to do all of this himself. God was going like, I want to partner with you to go lead these people to do this thing. And Moses is looking at himself going, but me? Just me? Right? I think Moses believed he had to do this because when you believe, or when you even just operate as though you have to do it all yourself, your weaknesses will become your sticking points that threaten you to move forward because there's nothing else to move it but you. And so you can sometimes get stuck behind those things when it's all up to you and when everything has to be done by you. When you believe that you have to do it all yourself, then you need to get stronger and you need to get better and you need to fix a whole host of things because the thing you care about might get thwarted by your own weaknesses because there's no one else to help in that but you. And so our weaknesses become just like huge. They become very overwhelming and threatening. When you believe that you have to do it all yourself, we end up closing ourselves off to God and to others, and we become consumed by what we see in the mirror because that's the only story to tell, because it's all on us. What does God say to Moses every time? Moses says, I can't. And God says, but I'm with you, and I can. Moses says, but they won't believe me. They won't even listen to me. God says, but I'm with you, and here's what you can speak, and I'll help them find their belief. Moses says, but I'm slow of speech, and I don't know what to say. And God says, I'm the one who made man's mouth, and I will help put words in your mouth and help teach you and grow you as you step into this process in faith, Moses. Like, let's do this together. Every time Moses is staring at his weaknesses in a way that wants to keep him stuck. And every time it's like God says, Moses, look at me. And so friends, I want to ask you, go back to that question about how is God trying to grow you in your life right now? What's God leading you towards in your life right now? And as you pull that back into frame, I want to ask you this question. Where are you looking right now? Where's your head turned? What are you looking at? Because I can promise you this, if the only thing that you are looking at is yourself and your own weaknesses, you're going to feel like it's so easy to stay stuck right where you are. Because that's hard. And that's a lot to overcome, isn't it? So what I want to challenge you to do is just shift the direction in which you look. And look at the all-powerful God of the universe. And I know you know good theology and things, and you're like, there's nothing that he can't do, and I know that. But no, I mean really look at who God is, at the way he partners, at how he's with. And then I don't want you to just look at that. You know what else I want you to look at? What is the thing that God has been doing in your heart? What is that beautiful picture? See, if Moses has spent less time looking at his own image, so to speak, and more time looking at the beautiful potential of freed Hebrew slaves, the beautiful potential of his people liberated, the beautiful potential of God walking alongside this with him, that potential would grow in size and picture and captivate his heart. And when that grows in size and picture and captivates your heart, do you know what you find? Courage. You find courage to take a risk because you finally have something that is beautiful enough to risk something for. That image has to get big enough that you would go, I trust this and I'll risk that because I know what my heart most desires. I don't have to look at me and become obsessed about my weaknesses and all of these pieces. I can look at God and I can look at the beautiful vision that he's put in front of me and I can let it pull me forward, friends. This is how we grow. Don't get stuck there. And I love this because this is almost like God is looking and saying to Moses, just like he'd say to each of us, Moses, what would happen if instead of staring at all of that all the time, you turned your gaze and you looked at me and you trusted me with your life? Friends, if in your life right now you looked and you said, I'm not going to let my weaknesses or shortcomings or faults or failures or whatever else might be in that bucket for you, I'm not going to look at that and let that become as large as it possibly could. I'm going to look at what God has for me. And I'm going to look at who he is. And I'm going to look at and feel the steps he's leading and guiding me to by faith. I'm going to trust him. What would that change in your life? What difference would that make for you? And you know what? What would happen if you let others join you too? Exodus 4, verse 14. It says, then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And I love this. I know you might be like, the anger of the Lord. I'm like, it's about time. Because if you think about it, guys, this has been like an argument for 2 straight chapters where Moses is like, no, what about this? And God's like, okay, I'll meet you in the midst of that. No, what about this? Okay, I'll meet you in the midst of that. No, what about this? Okay, I'll meet you in the midst of that. And then you get here, verse 14, and it's like God's like, Moses, like, come on, man, right? And Moses says, Moses, is there not Aaron? You know, your brother? Your family, the Levite? God says, I know he can speak well, and he knows he's God. Behold, he's coming out to meet you already, right? And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and his mouth, because God's big enough for all of it. And I'll teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. Guys, you know why I love this part? It's not just that God looks at Moses and says, Moses, why don't you go ask Aaron to help you? God looks at Moses and goes, Moses, Aaron is already on his way to connect with you. What does that tell you? Moses hasn't had this conversation with Aaron. What's that tell you? God has already been moving and working in the heart of Aaron. And you know what's happened in Aaron's heart? He cares about these things. And he has strengths. And he has passions. And he has desires. And God's essentially looking at Moses saying, Moses, there's already people coming to partner with you. You're not in this alone. I was already working in the heart of Aaron. And who knows how many countless other people God's working in the heart of so that you can have a partner in this. Gosh, Moses, like, I'm enough for you, but you also need other people. Like, we've taken care of that. Like, let's do this together. And I love the kindness of God as he knows where Moses' weaknesses would be. Moses has great strengths as a leader and many things, but Moses needed an Aaron in his life. And Moses gets told this, is like, so Moses, invite him to partner with you. What's God saying? You don't have to do all of this yourself. Your weaknesses get to be your weaknesses. There are people around you who are strong in these places. Partner with them, use them, and know that's the gift God's placed in them as he's moving their heart and growing with them. Right? This is a big deal. I have a friend named Eric who told me that when he was growing up, one of the hardest moments was when his dad left abruptly when he was very young. And he doesn't know why his dad left, and he doesn't have good answers to any of that. It just happened, and then they were forced to rally around that, and his dad never came back. And he remembers that situation when he was growing up and how hard that was for him as a young man. He was the oldest child in the family, and also how hard it was for him watching his mom, and she's trying to be strong and wrestle through this, but it's like the world's turned upside down. It was really, really tough. He has these memories of like praying with his mom as they were walking through that. And he remembers her sitting down at a table and like making plans about like, what do I need to do and what are the things, because it's like the whole world changed and she suddenly needed to grow a whole bunch and figure a bunch of things out that she had to do now on her own. And his mom ended up working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She had a full-time job during the day. I think she was like an office assistant. And then a couple of nights a week, she was actually stocked shelves at a grocery store or a hardware store. And she was working a bunch. And he told me this. And as I heard him talk about it, I was like, so Eric, your dad was gone. Gone. And your mom was doing what she needed to do and working hard and all the things that were hers to try to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. I was like, dude, you spent a lot of time growing up alone. And I thought I was being compassionate. And he laughed at me. He said, alone? And he said, I almost wish I was alone more than I was. And I said, explain, because I was not expecting this answer. Eric said that essentially his mom, when she found out about this, he goes, my mom knew what she had to do and she knew what only she could do, but then there was a whole bunch of other stuff she knew she just couldn't do. And so she literally went to my neighbors, and she said he lived in a cul-de-sac in this neighborhood, in a small house, like 5 houses in this little cul-de-sac. And he said, went to each of my neighbors, explained her situation, and just said, and I need some help. And they said, we have you, and we'll do this. And Eric said that any time his mom was at work and he came home and it was lunchtime or he was by, like at lunch or dinner, he always had a house where there was lunch provided for him or dinner to sit down with the family at to eat. And he said he always spent a couple nights a week eating dinner with a different family in this neighborhood. And he started to refer to them as like, because I'm like, so you have a stepmom? And he's like, well, no, that's not who they are. I just didn't know what to call them when I was a kid and all these things. And he says they became like family to him. And so he's talking about aunts and uncles. None of these people are blood relation to him. And he's talking about all of these people who poured into his life. He made this joke with me. He goes, everybody thinks that their parents are always like watching, over them. And it's like, man, my parents need to stop being helicopter parents. He goes, do you know what it's like to have a whole neighborhood who's allowed to discipline you? Do you know what it's like to have a whole neighborhood who's trying to watch out to make sure that like you stay in line and all this stuff? He's like, I would have loved to have been alone more growing up. And he said it was crazy because his mom would be able to make it to most of his games, but she'd have to miss some of them. And he goes, but it never failed. I always had the largest cheering section at any time I was at a sporting event because of how many people are in my community. And I was taken aback by all of this, because it wasn't the answer that I was expecting. It wasn't the story that I was expecting. And in all honesty, I was moved by the courage of what his mom did in that moment, because she knew that there was something that she had to grow in, not because she chose it, but because this just landed here. And she knew that there was some opportunity, something that she had to grow in, but she also knew that there were some things that she was weak in or couldn't do. She knew that there were moments, just brass tacks, that like she could step into, and that there were some things that she couldn't do. And she opened herself up to say, who has God been working in and moving in that I can invite them along the way? And the neighbors around were like, we love your family. We love your son. We're in, count us in. And they became family for people who needed it. And I love it because my friend Eric doesn't describe this whole experience. The moment with his dad was horrible and hard, but he doesn't describe his upbringing as a limited, shrunken upbringing, but it is an expansive one where he ended up experiencing more than he thinks most kids had. Isn't that beautiful? Friends, when we let our weaknesses keep us from moving forward because we think we have to do it all ourselves, we rob others of the opportunity to show their strengths and live out their love in our lives. We never know when God's working in a guy like Aaron in the Bible, who's already on his way to talk to Moses, who's already got his heart knit towards this whole thing because God's been moving and working. We never know in our own lives when God's been working and moving through somebody else because they have the strength that we might need because God cares about the whole thing as we move it all towards what he most desires. You're not in this alone. You never have been. God's always been with you, but you also get to open up your heart, your vulnerability, your eyes, and invite someone to join you in the things that matter most. And here's what I promise. If God's been moving in their heart, if this is a strength in their life, usually when you ask people like that, it's a life-giving moment. They'll tell you if they can't, but more often than not, if it's those types of moments, it's like, okay, I feel uniquely suited to partner here. I'm in, count me in. God's done this in my heart too. Would you open yourself up to that experience? Friends, I don't know how God is going to continue to grow you. That's your journey. I can't see the future. I don't know where God is going to lead you. I don't know who he's going to move you towards. I don't know who there is in your future that's specifically yours to love. But here's what I do know. That God will grow you because he's a God that's always moving, always active, always with us, always leading. And that as he does, your weaknesses, they get to be real. We all have weaknesses. They just don't get to be the thing that prevents whatever it is that God ultimately has for you. And I want you to know that. Choose where you want to look. Choose the direction you fix your eyes and let that image get as big as possible. Let it build you with courage that you might step into whatever it is that God has for you. And when you find yourself then suddenly feeling like, but I have to do this all myself, pause and know. First, God has always been with you. But that also he's moving in the hearts and lives of so many people around you to join in partnering in what matters most to him. So invite them along the way. Your job in those moments is to look up, to look around, and then to invite people in who have that kind of strength and goodness and heart to join you in your journey as you take the steps that God has for you. And as you do, I promise you, you're going to grow. Let's pray. God, we love you. We do. I love that you gather a church like this with so many people who care about one another, who care about you, who care about this world. I love the potential that exists in this place right now, and I love the work that you've done in each of our hearts as individuals already. God, I pray for the many of us in here as we have thought about that question of like, what does it mean to grow with you here this morning? God, give us courage in the places that we need it. Help us to know that we're not alone. In the moments we feel in over our heads, may we sense just how close to us you are and to know just how powerful you are in us and through us and around us in ways we never see. And God, give us the vulnerability and the courage and the honesty to look at someone else and ask them to join us sometimes, to invite other people into the picture so that the whole thing can be as beautiful as this community that is your church. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. Friends, before you go, my name is Ryan. I'm one of the pastors here, and it's awesome to have you. If you're new, I'd love to meet you. I'm going to be right over in this area called the Next Steps area, which is also, if you've ever just wanted to take a next step around here and you didn't know who to ask or what to do, and you didn't want to figure that out on your own, we would love to partner with you. And they have great people that would love to answer questions and try to make that as easy as possible. And if anything we talked about this morning makes you go, I think I'd love someone to pray for me. Wonderful people in the prayer room that would love to do just that. They're here every week. They'll pray for you however you want. So awesome to have you guys. We'll see you soon.